Hello and welcome to episode 53 of HardcoreGaming101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively, definitively, and scientifically rank the games you nominate. My name is Xerxes, and take my wife, for example. My panelists today are...
I'm Carl.
And I'm Grace from Stop Skeletons from Fighting.
And I'm Derek from Stop Skeletons from Fighting.
Yeah, double win.
Welcome, Derek and Grace.
Thank you.
It's good to finally be talking to you guys, instead of just listening to you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us.
On this podcast, we have 3 rules. Rule 1, all rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Rule 2, you can nominate one game at a time via 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher. We've stopped accepting nominations via Twitter for the foreseeable future, but in July, keep your eyes peeled because we're going to start letting you in again. And Rule 3, you can nominate games that have already been nominated, just don't nominate games we've already ranked. See for yourself which games have been nominated and which games have been ranked by going to bit.ly/47kgames. That's bit.ly/47kgames. The next game we're talking about is Hakaioh, King of Crusher, which was nominated by Earl Grey III on iTunes and developed by, I have no clue, published by Fab Communications Company Limited for the Sony PlayStation on November 12th, 1998 in Japan. So Hakaioh is, I believe, roughly translates from Japanese as Lord of Destruction, or King of Destruction, rather.
So they burnt they burnt such a cool name on this. Like no one could grab that
King
name
of Destruction, King of Crusher.
This may have come out in Europe, but I believe it was primarily Japan only. It is very hard to find any information about this game, at least from a cursory search that I was doing.
I believe if you typed it exactly as it's spelt in Japanese on whatever search engines the Japanese use, there's probably a little
Google
information hiding around. They could use Google. They might use Yahoo.
They use Google.
They like Yahoo. But no, I know that some of the YouTube videos have been uploaded by Japanese YouTubers. So there's a
rather legendary kusoge. For those who, I mean, how could you? Our show is pretty obscure, so if you don't know what kusoge is, you probably should. It is just Japanese for shit game or crap game or something like that.
But the sentiment, I think, is slightly more. It's more like B grade in a way, rather than just.
Yeah, that's true. It's like glorious crap game. How about that?
Yeah. That's a little closer.
It's a title of kind of veneration and respect in a way. It's not just a bad game, but it's a bad game that deserves your attention for some reason. There is some level of badness to it that is, in a way, admirable.
But I think I'm pretty sure we may have talked about kusoge when we did Super Monkey Die Boken. I might have talked a little bit about it. So definitely go back and listen to that if you need more.
If you must, yeah.
Hey.
Well, I'm sure that, but just, for those of you just joining us, we're not gatekeepers here. We're not shutting the gate in your face.
No, but they should listen to our old recordings. How'd they get to 53 if they didn't do, 24 or something? I can't remember.
Some people don't start at number 1. They might just start with whatever the new one is. And we keep the gates open and we say, hey, come on in. Come on into our walled garden.
World of shit game, apparently.
Yeah, just a sample from these fruiting trees of dorkdom.
But yeah, so you play as an angry salaryman who attempts to destroy Japan, I think is the plot. So you are a average, ordinary Japanese dude. You have a wife and child, and you are visited by, I guess, a space moth of some kind. I thought it was more of a mosquito, but I'm willing to go with whatever.
Moth-like antennae.
House of the Living Dead 2. Or, as I prefer to know it, Night of the Living Dead, or Typing of the Dead.
Yeah, Typing of the Dead.
Sorry, that's my preferred canonical way to experience that title.
Oh, the little bat guy.
Yeah, it absolutely reminded me of that. But it really is... Oh my god. I guess it is difficult for me to, kind of look at this game in as thorough of a way as I usually like to, just because I couldn't find a translated ROM. And I did really want some context. I couldn't tell if this was sort of an American psycho situation where it's he's a salaryman, he's being crushed by the patriarchy or whatever, and he just needs to bust out. All right, that's cool. Or is he he's totally bought into his lifestyle, but then a mosquito bites him and then he is imbued with demonic rage and just can't handle it.
I think it's the latter. Technically, I would say if you want to not get a translation, but get like somebody who I believe can read Japanese and talking about the game as they play it. Game journalist Heidi Kempf. I think I'm pronouncing your last name right.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, gaming.moe, that person. She does, I think she plays the entire game. She streamed it live, and then it's on her YouTube channel.
It's not a super long game. It falls in under 3 hours, I think.
Yeah, believe it or not, this game is not too substantial. But she does. I believe she has a decent command of Japanese, and she does. I think she's reading. She does sometimes translate or paraphrase the text. And the way she puts it
beforehand, and I guess I didn't find it as like it didn't quite. I guess give me what I wanted, but perhaps it's the game that didn't give me what I wanted.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the game gave you what anybody wanted, but did it give us what we needed?
Yes.
What we deserved.
Yeah, it gave us what we deserved. It's not the game we want. It's the game we deserve. So I think the
learning about this game, and it's like, yes,
yeah,
I'm better off now than I was before I knew about this game.
Your life is enriched, I dare say.
So this is absolutely one of those, because I used to read a PlayStation magazine back when they made magazines for video games, and they used to highlight just magazine. It's they kill trees and then they put words on it for some reason.
That's horrible.
But they used to highlight Japanese games they'd be like, these will never come out over here because they were just like insane in their way. And this is just one of those games that feels like that, where it's just like, what do you do? Well, it's like Rampage or ARG, except there's not really a gameplay component. You just break things until you break enough things that you can advance to the next level, and then you end up as Flying Godzilla destroying a city, and that's it. That's the game.
So the story of the game, such as it is, and as best I can tell, is that Space Batmoth thing comes down and bites a ordinary Japanese middle class guy and says that you are your heart is filled with horrible rage and you never let it out, and I'm going to allow you to wreak your destructive fantasies upon the populace and etc. And so what happens is he suddenly turns into a guy who jog runs everywhere and can't turn corners easily.
He turns like a van.
He's always running, even when he's going slowly. And he does turn.
Doesn't have windows in the back. That's how it feels.
Yeah, that kind of van. Like the ones the Wet Bandits drove.
The one that, if you got a passenger, you're like, all right, I really need you to lean that way when we turn. Just lean over there, because it's going to tip.
Let's hope for a strong tailwind to our... just kind of get the back end of the van moving. It controls ridiculously. We talk about forklift controls or tank controls. This is those vehicles have a lot more agency and movability than this guy does. It is hilarious.
Someone who can ice skating controls.
It's kind of like the way the game works is, I'm not the first person to compare it to this, but it's kind of like Adventure Island. In the Adventure Island games, you have to collect, fruit, or else your constantly depleting health meter will run out and you die. In this game, you have to destroy stuff, and you can't hurt people. At least not directly. There are people and there are cops who will take shots at you and stuff like that. It doesn't hurt you. Your wife and kid will just run away from you immediately. It's kind of
that first stage is a bit more domestic than fun.
Right. It's all you do is just smash stuff, and by stuff I mean desks, doors, bookcases. It is Impotent Rage the Simulator.
So it's like the Katamari games, except really depressing.
It is. And as you progress through the game, after so many stages, you start out in your home. I think you go to an office building, and then the moth comes back. There's a weird cutscenes, and these cutscenes are oddly Hitchcock cutscenes.
Well, because they all use late 90s CGI, and it's
yeah. I mean, the quality of the animation and stuff is terrible, but the way that the scenes are edited and directed as it.
Well, because it keeps cutting, the creature doesn't exist in our world. It cuts to this smoky void where this thing is you must destroy everyone.
But I mean, even the way that the scenes are edited together is actually very artful, in my opinion. It
gave me a total Twin Peaks vibe. So
I was definitely feel the Twin Peaks in it, which
I'm really
that's the coolest part, maybe.
Yeah, no, that definitely set, especially the intro. It really it's doing some heavy emotional lifting for this game that it does not need, or like it's not,
Yes.
it's not service the experience in any way.
Can
like
you describe the intro? Can you describe the intro for us?
Sure. Like, I'll try to see what I remember. Like, you see a fire truck, sirens blazing, and it's like opens wide on the fire truck in a black void, and then close on the sirens, and then wide on the thing, and then the reshot of that. It just recycles these same animated bits over and over. And then you see a boy, like, I don't know, somehow the fire truck gets smashed, and then suddenly there was a boy playing with the fire truck, and then he throws it on the ground and it gets smashed. And then suddenly the fire truck is okay, and then a foot steps on it and it is smashed. I believe. Like, I think,
yeah, in a way, watching it and playing it are not that different.
Yeah.
It's like you get basically the same experience.
Part of that reasoning is, and I will mention the game a bit like Tale of the Sun, the camera angle and sort of the way the game works isn't what you might expect. The camera is always fixed behind you, but doesn't matter what you do, it's always kind of just like sitting behind you, like in Tale of the Sun or Pepsi Man, and you basically only have the option of kind of going forward and breaking things. There's not really... This isn't like a free-roaming game. Even when you become Godzilla and you're smashing a city, it's still a small area that you just kind of stomp through. That's like a track, more or less.
That because you can go backwards. Like, this still is like a 3D plane, but it's almost like a shoebox, and the camera is just fixed.
Yes, you can walk backwards, so it's not like a shmup or anything where it's forcing you forward. But going backwards means you have to walk towards the camera, and it can become a real hassle to do.
Oh, you know how much I love doing that. Crash Bandicoot sucks. So the
at least it controlled well.
Yeah.
Crash
This is one of the biggest fights we ever had.
That's kind of where I want to jump in on this game, is just the way you control. I guess we already talked about the controls in general with the way you drive the ship into the night. But what I really hated was just how slow your character moves and how the hit detection is just garbage. And like, I want to enjoy this game where I'm smashing things, but smashing things is hard.
Right.
Because you actually feel like an impotent, like, middle-aged man who goes like, I'm gonna break this desk! I
can break the desk! I hate you! Why aren't you breaking?
Well, once you get to like the third phase of the dog man werewolf beast phase, which happens,
small detail, you become a dog werewolf beast thing.
Yeah,
as you do.
When you get to the third phase of that, and you realize you're about approximately the same size as like houses, that becomes way more. That does become way more fun because I feel like suddenly you are able to smash shit. I
almost think that they basically kind of, because obviously the controls are mostly the same. I feel like they were building the controls for somewhere around the Wolf Beast Man monster mode, and then they didn't bother making a kind of more sensical human sort of movement mode. They just kind of like backported that. So, when you're smashing the buildings and stuff, the hit detection being wanky doesn't really matter, and you feel like, oh, I'm basically the size of I'm like an 8-story bus here, so like the fact that I control weird is fine. But when you're a man person, it's like, oh, it's kind of crap. But
yeah, like, and that is true because so you have 4 controls besides movement, which are like headbutt, which is awesome, kick, punch, and jump. And the jumping really is pointless until you get to the giant dinosaur phase of your hero's journey.
Right.
Where you are able, like, where, to me, in my opinion, I guess I was using that to smash helicopters with my skull.
Yes.
Which was very satisfying, I guess, and luckily it only took. But other than that, it really doesn't feel like the whole moveset was tailored to your model.
No, and so let's backtrack a little bit and explain what's going on in this game. So the story, as we said,
we were explaining it. It's done.
Well, no, we're not. Like, so this is a game that can be interpreted. It is a text in a way that can be interpreted. Because I have an English degree, and damn it, I am going to use that thing. So the kid who, like, at the beginning smashes the fire engine, that he's playing with. It's like, I think the game is trying to say something about how, as children, we are allowed to, like, lash out and just, like, be destructive for the hell of it, because that's what kids do. It allows us to feel powerful without actually causing any real harm. And as adults, especially in Japan, where you're supposed to be nice to people and civil and work as a team, which is just the weirdest thing ever for Americans. But, like, it's like, it's really frustrating because you never get to do that. And so that's why when the Space Moth Bat guy comes, he's like, your heart is full of hatred and anger, and I'm going to let it loose upon the world. And then you like go out and like, you're kind of just like, you know, you're just some schlub like going around like, you know, kicking desks, and you can't open doors. This is my favorite part of the game. You cannot open doors. You can only kick them down.
I think you can headbutt. You can do whatever you want, but...
Well, okay, you can break them down, but you have to break the doors down. There's no option to stop your rage like symphony and just like open the door like a normal person. You have to smash the door down. That's your only option. Then you wake up. There's a cutscene where you like wake up like after a bender sort of in a field, I think. And you're like, oh my God, what have I done? And then a Doberman comes over and bites you, and you turn into what most people describe as being a werewolf type creature, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like a like the traditional Japanese folklore demon because it's got the two horns.
It's definitely gonna have
it's like an oni type creature.
Yeah, they often have like wolf fur on them, so that's probably where
and they always have the two horns, and I think that's what it's supposed to be, and which goes to my concept of the game's thesis statement, if you will. Again, I'm using that literature degree, damn it. I'm using it. But I think that like in Japan, like the Oni characters and other kinds of characters are kind of like the id, you know, of Freudian psychology. They're kind of like the version of humanity that is untethered by social norms, and like, you know, they're just pure selfishness. And then you just get a little bit bigger, and then instead of knocking down desks and stuff, you were like running up in a blind rage to kick down telephone poles for no reason. I hate this telephone pole! I'm kicking it! You're broken now! Yeah! Showed you telephone pole. Oh, you telephone pole over there? I'm gonna show you!
The only way you can...
a total asshole to become president! Because I can! You will feel my anger!
The only way to lose in this game is to not be angry enough. That's the only lost condition in this game, is to not break enough stuff quickly enough, and then your anger will subside, and you will no longer be the king of crushering.
Yeah. Whoa. So, and the next thing that happens is you become a dinosaur, or like a basically like a Godzilla type thing.
It's definitely the Japanese kaiju, Godzilla, or whatever. Everyone knows it.
Dinosaur with like a unicorn horn thing like that, right?
You have a fire breath. You're a kaiju.
That is because you get struck with lightning after getting hurt or something. It's all
some other weird thing happens to you. You wake up and you're like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And then, no, too late. You're a dinosaur now. And then after that, I believe the last stage is you're a winged dinosaur, and it's this really great cutscene of like Manhattan, circa 1998, just going about its day. And suddenly there's like this winged dinosaur that comes.
Towers. Is that how you can?
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I mean it can't be helped. I mean,
dated.
In a way. Yeah, in a way, stuff like this. Yeah, it's just another cat.
I find that really funny though, that your character gets like super angry and is like, "Well, now I'm going to destroy America." It's like, what?
Well, you suck, and you suck, and everybody's going to feel I'm angry, and I don't know why, and you're all going to deal with it.
Yeah,
the real first God of War game.
So,
I'm just angry all the time.
Yeah.
So this game is anti-materialistic, anti-capitalist.
Like, I was going to say, I do...
Like I said.
If we give this game credit for being art, this may be a statement on America's kind of hanging out in Japan post-war. It may be...
I would say it's a statement of what's going on in America right now. Which is that like people are angry, they have no idea why they're angry, they don't know how to articulate it, but god damn it, you are all going to suffer. In this whole place, we're just going to burn it down because I'm angry.
And that includes destroying the Statue of Liberty in a boss fight.
It's all got to go.
It's actually a boss fight, which is fantastic because
I don't care. We'll elect the Hamburglar. He'll be president, and everything's going to burn. And you will all suffer because I am angry.
All of Xerxes' pent-up anger is just coming out right now. I'm sorry, everybody. He's furious. You can't hold him back now.
I'm going to kick this vending machine.
This game is pulling off a lot of really fun stuff. I just wish it controlled better. Like, I wish it was just mechanically a better game. Like, because I do love what it's doing.
If it were Blast Core, right? Which is what it could be. Like, if it had that kind of control, or say like Godzilla, destroy all monsters, melee, you know, which is another great kaiju game where
Xerxes,
you can
if I can, I would like to recommend Cat Lateral Damage as a great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do need to try that.
I feel like if you enjoyed this game to a certain extent, if you like the smashing aspect, I think it is pulled off a little bit better in cat lateral damage.
But yeah,
well, on the flip side, I think that the game being really janked up and broken helps it get its message across better than if it was full of, because I think collateral damage as an example, it has things like scoring and all these like mechanisms and things that like kind of boost the spectacle, whereas this game is just impotent anger. You don't get any bonuses for being artful or doing things quickly. It's just like you just break it and then it keeps going, keep breaking it, whatever.
One might say that despite all your rage, you are in a way still just a rat in a cage, as it were. Yeah, I think that's the Beatles. True. The Beatles, right? Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
Might as well be. Kids these days don't give a rat's about smashing pumpkins. They don't know the classics.
That's the classic music track, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got the break stuff.
One of those days.
It's one of those days.
Well, that's absolutely like a great analogy for this game, because like if we are going to buy into what you were saying, and you have a degree in literature, so of course we are.
I do.
That's what he constantly claims.
The lyrics are, it's just one of those days where you don't want to wake up.
Everybody sucks. Everything is fucked.
Isn't that the one where he's like, you don't want to grow up? Is that part of the line? Oh, okay. Well, that's
but that is the subtext. You're right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is kind of what this guy is doing. Well, like he's regressing back to childhood.
Right. Oh, he wants to smash that fire truck.
Yeah.
As somebody who is a student of literature, is this truly
I'm listening.
The video game adaptation to Fight Club that we've needed this whole time?
Oh, this is much better than Fight Club.
Or Falling Down, right? That Michael Douglas movie.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I want the hamburger that looks like it does in the picture, because this is what we can get angry about.
Yeah. He just wanted some breakfast. It's not his damn fault they stopped serving breakfast at 11 a.m. Just give him the breakfast.
They don't do it, though. McDonald's does not.
They do it here now. Just so we're clear. They do now.
What a time to
That whole movie falls apart. Then Michael Douglas storms in. I want breakfast. Here you are, sir. Oh, okay then. Cool. Bye then.
This actually didn't work well for McDonald's. It didn't. Yeah, it didn't work well. Not all he bought it.
And now you got breakfast all day. Michael Douglas can finally rest easy.
Yeah. Okay. So this game has two different endings. I don't really know the context, but there's a good ending and a bad ending. And I think the good ending, you actually lose your rage and you go back to being a salaryman or something. I'm not super clear on that. It's just abstract.
Is that the good ending, or is that like the nightmare dystopia ending, where it's like you accomplish nothing and go back to your like nobody life on the hamster wheel of capitalism or whatever?
All I know is it's the ending that has more CG footage, so I can't really tell you.
Must be the more important, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The greatest part, though, is I think the other one, you're consumed by rage. I can't be super sure on that because it doesn't really get much footage. It's the bad ending as such.
The dinosaur just literally combusts. And, like the words like hatred, like smoke off of its body at the last scene.
But the best part is that the actual credits for this game, the sequence of credits, they set up a camera outside, and they just smashing plates. That's it. You can't see the cast. The text of the creators scrolls up like the credits, but it's just them throwing plates at the ground. You just see plate after plate after plate get thrown at the ground for this whole sequence.
I don't want to do this, Mom.
And that's why
done, dude.
I do think that they had more art and desire to make art in this than they did sort of technical ability, but they clearly actually were trying here.
Like
and
I
that's
said,
so good.
All the cutscenes, although they look like garbage, like they are animated worse than the the average local car dealership commercial is these days. They look worse than that. But there's a craft that goes into the setting them up and the framing of everything and the editing that is really good.
Well, I think the main thing is, you don't have a big enough team to do really nice CG, so they did the best they could. But you've got a couple
super talented people who have a vision, and you're like, here's 2.5 weeks, make a game. Okay. All right. And they've got this whole, and under those conditions, this is pretty great. It's not a good game, but
it's distinctive.
But you'll never forget it once you see it. And I think everybody who plays it really comes away from it with some personal kind of impression. It will make a mark on you that I don't think will ever go away, at least for me. Seriously, I was playing this game and I felt like I just had been awakened to like some kind of reality. There's some kind of revelation, enlightenment type thing happening. We're just like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. It's just impotent rage. Like, I'm going to smash this desk. I'm going to kick this vending machine. I hate these books. It's like,
this game resonated so much with you. I can't believe how like this is just the game for you, We really do have to move on to ranking this one though. It's
well, what if we just
we have
this an entire show in and of itself?
Because we've actually talked a lot about this game. A lot. More than I think anyone has probably ever talked about this game in English before.
Including people who have played it, because they would be done by now. So, all right, here's what I usually do with games like this. Is that there's like a section at the bottom of the list for stuff that is technically terrible, but artistically meritful? That's not a word. But artistically valuable in a way. And I would say like one of my examples is usually Friday the 13th for the Commodore 64, which is a game that, by the way, the Friday the 13th Kickstarter game just came out that borrows a lot of stuff from that.
I think that one's supposed to be pretty good too, actually, from what I hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally not finished, and from what I've heard, but it does a similar thing with like the more the non-Jason characters get killed, like the more powerful Jason becomes, and that's sort of something that is going on in the Commodore 64 version. But so it's interesting to see. But that's a game that has some weird, if perhaps accidental, art to it. And I would say the same of Caverns of Kafka. And it's kind of hard because I know that there's no way Derek and Grace have played those games, because why would you subject yourself to that if you hadn't basically promised the internet that you would play whatever they nominated?
Friday the 13th is worth a few minutes of your time, I would say. Caverns of Kafka, you'll play... If you play it, you'll just be like, what? Huh? And then you just turn it off because you can.
Okay, so the Stop Skeletons crew, Derek and Grace. Have you played Super Monkey Daiboken? No. Have you played Superman 64?
Yes.
Okay, so Superman 64 is kind of below this, where I think that's a game that is terrible and has really no redeeming value to it.
Mm-hmm. Genuinely no redeeming value.
I would say, what about Jones in the Fast Lane? Have you played that?
Not.
Well, I did notice the Top Gear Rally for the N64.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you know Top Gear Rally, Grace?
No, well, I'm familiar.
I mean, for the N64, that's a decent racing game, right? Is it really that terrible? I'm not.
Yeah, it's not.
Like interested because Top Gear.
It is not related to the show.
Is it not? Okay, it's not based on that franchise.
No, it's way before. Yeah,
Top Gear video games actually have existed for I think the first Top Gear game was on the Kemco Super Nintendo game.
You'll have to forgive me because racing games are one of my biggest intentional blind spots.
I will say,
forget they exist.
I'm really glad to see that No One Can Stop Mr. Domino is way down the hell here, because I've never cared for that game at all.
Right.
Well, it's great because one of our other guests, Jonathan Holmes, couldn't believe we put it that low. He was just he's like, "What? That game's so great!" Yeah, and I actually
agree that this game kind of low down in this area. I think this is an appropriate area.
Well, I'm willing to say that I think No One Can Stop Mr. Domino is more competently made, but I would probably put Crusher above it, to be perfectly honest.
I'm thinking I'm thinking it's got to go. I'd say at the lowest above Shaq Fu.
I was going to say it needs to be under Shaq Fu.
Actually, I was just about to say my only.
I like our guest today.
It needs to be below Shaq Fu, because Shaq Fu on the Genesis is. I feel like I was
It's better than you were told.
Yeah, I was sold a bill of goods of Trail of Lies. What? And I played that game and was like, this is not a good game.
I know, right? This is the best thing ever.
Yeah. Did you guys have some kind of meeting before we started recording? Okay, if Shaq Fu comes up, I don't know if
his live YouTube channel and watch us play. I have a live stream of me going through the motions, going I don't hate this.
What? Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not that bad. That's why I nominated it myself.
Does Shaq Fu, as surprisingly not horrible as it is, does it actually evoke any feelings other than this is surprisingly not horrible? I don't think it does. Where I would say
so much lower for that, because it's a fighting game based on Shaquille O'Neal.
You have
as a fighting game, it is about as good a game as King of Crusher is a break desks game. The fighting is so clumsy that it almost feels accidental. I just pressed a bunch of buttons. Well,
it does have some semblance of competence, and I feel like the only argument for Crusher here is that it has a pathos, it has a philosophy that it does not pursue, but that is kind of.
I feel like they weren't capable of pursuing what they actually were getting at, because I think that they were trying to get at like this thing. They were like, I have this idea, I have this concept, it's there, but they couldn't wrestle it well enough. One thing I will say in Crush's favor that I think is really cool is that you do actually gradually become a flying dinosaur monster. I think that's maybe over, because you do start as a salaryman, and then each level you actually become more of this monstrous thing, which I think is really neat. Right. That it actually does that.
Who would win in a fight? Shaq?
I was gonna say,
or the flying monster?
Shaq is already like.
Well, this is basically like Charles Barkley versus Godzilla, right?
I'm just saying, like, Shaq can dunk with the best of them.
But okay, Shaq can't make free throws, but he can dunk.
Yeah.
So,
he can dunk.
But in Shaq Fu, Shaq can't do either because he doesn't get a basketball. That's the problem. That game.
I'm just really good at kicking slowly.
In the intro.
So, I mean, here, like,
I will put it at right above Friday the 13th, but I will not put it above Shaq Fu.
Yeah.
Hardline.
Let me just put it this way. Like, Shaq Fu, like I said, it's a more competent game in a lot of ways, but there is an artistry that goes into King of Crusher that is nowhere to be seen in Shaq Fu.
And
there's no way to be seen in a lot of games, though.
But I say it about a lot of games because that's what's the point of this list if not to alert people to something that games can do well that nobody thought they could do. Like this game, I say King of Crusher is one of the on the short list of games I would put in like MoMA. Like it is like it fails as a game, but as a weird work of pop art, it is amazing.
But our list is the top 47,858 games of all time, isn't it?
There are a lot of things games can be besides just strictly games that...
It is a really difficult undertaking because you need like sub-lists of like most artful, best part.
Yeah, I mean this...
Don't poke holes in the art of this.
What's got better butts?
This game is fun about this because the camera
all right, fine, okay.
such a way that it is focused almost entirely on your butt.
All right, I might concede one notch above Shaq Fu for the butt factor.
Yeah.
Okay. I can live with that. All right, so that's where it's going to go.
Butt factor.
Coming soon to ABC
Hakaioh
Network. The butt factor.
Hakaioh. King of Destruction, King of Crusher.
Yeah, what's it actually called?
King of Crusher. Hakaioh means like king of destruction, I think, is the way Google translates it.
You're a double king because one's in Japanese and one's in English, and they just repeat.
Destruction King, King of Crusher, I believe is the literal translation. It goes one notch above Shaq Fu and right below King's Quest 5.
All right.
I kind of regret this immediately, but okay, that's where it's going.
With the asterisk for that booty. It was the butt bump.
All right, the next game we're going to cover is Adventure, which was nominated by @neon_henchman on Twitter. It was developed by Atari. Really, it was developed by a guy named Warren Robinette for Atari and published by Atari for the Atari 2600. I don't have a release date, but I believe it's 1979?
Probably?
Yeah, okay, yeah, it is. Yeah, 1979. Seems like possibly 1980, but I really think it was 1979.
If you really want to split hairs on this, there's really nothing around that time that's like it. So whatever. It's like it's adventure. It is in the name. It is literally the first adventure in games. Basically, it's the
before people had to think about search and like what would actually aggregate well. I'm sorry, our dog is going crazy. Launchpad.
Here, boy.
Your dog is named Launchpad. Is your dog named after Launchpad McQuack?
Launchpad.
Yeah.
Here, boy.
Oh.
No adventures for you. He doesn't like that we're podcasting. He wants to see playing with him right now.
Hey, Mr. McD.
Will D, Mr. McDo.
But that's cool because he can listen to us talk about adventure, which
which we're gonna do whether we want to or no. I love Adventure. This game is it's pretty much the only game that you can say this is clearly a precursor to The Legend of Zelda. In a way, it was Warren Robinette's idea was I'm going to make a game that is basically Zork, but do it with graphics and no text. And he succeeds, and he does so,
excluding the text in the manual, which tells you what some of the more complex things operate.
That's true, but it's not describing the rooms to you. It's the exact opposite of Zork in the sense that it visually represents everything it is.
Yes.
There's at no point do you may not know what that thing is that looks like two brackets next to each other. But that's a bridge. But it doesn't really matter. Like you figure it out. It's got a game world, it's got like an overworld type map type thing. It's got different castles you can go into. It's got everybody I think knows at this point, it's got the first known Easter egg in video game history where you could hit like a very specific pixel in a very specific castle and find designed by Warren Robinette in a special room, and because Atari did not credit its developers at that time.
And then they went bankrupt in the future. What a coincidence.
Yeah, believe it or not, the people who made these games did not take kindly to being treated like garbage, and they left and formed another company called Activision that made really great games and gave credit to their designers and made a ton of money.
That's weird.
Today. It's
That's
strange.
So strange. I don't understand it. But so this game, you play as a cube or a block or a square or a dot, and that's you.
You're a dot, yeah.
Yeah, it's your representation is the dot. And you get to fight like duck dinosaur dragon things. I love them. They're so cute.
Yeah, there's the dragon.
And they actually you can see inside their stomach, so it's the first Vor game ever made.
To eat you're in there. Yeah, that's right. The dot is inside the belly.
What about Pac-Man?
Well, you can eat people, but
you don't get eaten.
It's very specific.
Quite okay.
Cool.
All right,
now you're
understanding part of the Vor fantasy, which is to be cognizant and sentient while inside somebody's digestive tract.
And it's great that actually is invention, but it's I love their design. It's like, I don't know if he just didn't think he could make a dragon, but they're just so cute. They're like weird duck-billed dragons.
Quetzalcoatl, like bird dragon vibe that I appreciated.
It was just like a duck to me.
Everything looks like a duck to you,
especially
this
dragon here.
Duck seahorse, right?
Yeah. And they chase you through the levels. They follow you.
They really do.
I guess like in terms of the simplicity of this game, which of course it has to be simple for the 2600, but I had not played this game before this podcast, and I didn't have a manual or anything. I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna jump in, and it was kind of complicated. Like it's not super complicated, but I had no idea of what to do or even how to win the game. But I still managed to do it, within like the first 15 minutes on my first.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
It is like in gameplay and aesthetic and sound, it is a complete distillation of a video game. It could not be simpler than this, but still be a coherent game with as many levels of challenge and replayability.
Well, I can only assume if you were playing this in 1979-ish on your home television, this would have you would just be like, my God, like
your mind would have split open like a baked potato. It was here. I mean, this is a time what the things that Atari game designers were doing at this time in the late 70s. What was basically like this is the perfect time period for game development in a sense, because it's right when they're really starting to understand the hardware, but they know nothing about game design because game design doesn't really exist as a concept. And so they have no clue what they can and can't do, and they just try it. And that's where you get games like Star Raiders and Haunted House and Adventure and stuff like that, where it's like, who would ever think to do this? And if they stop to think like, oh, I can't do that. No, we can't do that.
No, of course you can just pick up the sword and then you just kind of jam it into the dragons, like
right. And it looks like an arrow, and it really confused me because I kept thinking, oh, it's like a spear or an arrow, and therefore I should be grabbing it by the. But it doesn't really matter. You can grab it from any direction.
No, as long as they touch it before they touch you, it's all good.
According to William Robinette, I was reading this really cool interview in US Gamer that came out last year, and he was saying that his boss has told him that this game can't be made because, he was basing it off of Colossal Cave, which takes up about 100K. And they needed Adventure to only be 2 to 4K to be able to run.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay. And that's why he just didn't tell anybody that he was making this game. And then finally just showed it to a bunch of people and was like, can I keep making this? Okay, cool.
Right. And the same thing is true of Star Raiders, by the way. It was a game that was made by a guy named Doug Smith, and he did it in his spare time. He was like the sound chip designer for the was it the sound chip or the input output something or other for the Atari 8-bit computers, and he made Star Raiders, which is an even more complicated and impressive game, and did it in his spare time. And he talks about playing Adventure in its early builds and being blown away by that at the same time. It's really fascinating story to read about these guys. And this is the same time, by the way, when like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak are like screwing around with the breakout board and stuff like that. It's like, this is video games ground zero, you know. The crazy thing about Adventure, before we get on to ranking, because it's hard to really talk too much about this game because it is very, very simple. And in a lot of ways, you're better off just playing it rather than listening to people talk about it. Because
probably read the manual before you play it, just because it gives you a little bit of hints like how to use the bridge, because the bridge is a very strange
and impressive addition. So every stage in the game or every screen in the game is perfectly symmetrical because that's the way the Atari was designed to draw its playfield, because it was basically designed to play combat and Pong, so that you could have totally symmetrical playfields, and that was fine. And so that's the way they did it. And it's got, you know, and they all kind of interconnect. It's like a big maze, and there's different items. There's the bridge, there's the sword, there's the key.
And there's the magnet in case you accidentally put your key in a wall, so you can use the magnet to suck it up. Yeah, you got the
magnet, which is a great example of like, well, there's a bug here, but rather than fixing the bug, we're just going to make another item that...
I'd say he couldn't, like, in the amount of space, he probably couldn't fix the bug, so his only choice was to make an item.
I'm not suggesting it's laziness. I mean, it's just an example of...
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the magnet because eventually I got to the point where I was carrying, like, the chalice, one of the keys, and the magnet, and I just took it with me through all of the rooms.
Right, and there's the chalice. Yeah.
We're going on an adventure, boys.
And the really weird thing is that you've got two enemies, I think. You've got the dragon, which we've already talked about, who just kind of wanders around.
There's 3 dragons, and they all have individual names, but I don't remember them. But
it doesn't matter. And there's the bat, which is a very interesting enemy.
And an asshole.
Yeah, the bat can pick you up and take you other places, I think.
No, the bat, he steals items. Yeah, and in order to use those items, you have to grab the bat, and then you have to carry the bat around, who now has the item, and the bat can get out of your grasp occasionally, and you're like, no, come back with my sword, you asshole! And then the dragon eats you.
But the bat is like an agent of chaos in this game, and it's exactly the thing that the game needed, because how can you have an adventure game and add value to it once you've solved the adventure, right? Introduce random elements.
Incredibly, the game's third difficulty setting, or third switch setting, is a randomized mode that places the items randomly, I believe it is. So it's incredible in that regard.
And you've got the bridge item, which you mentioned, but we didn't really discuss how it works. It's a huge item, and what you use it for is basically you drag it with you, and when you place it anywhere on the map, it cuts a path through obstacles, right?
Yeah, it lets you, as long as the kind of the exit and entrance on the bridge are in walkable terrain, you can walk across the bridge to get through walls in the labyrinth and mazes and stuff.
It's one of those innovations, like how in Earthbound, you know, once you're a high enough level, characters will just run away from you. Like, it's one of those innovations in video games that I'm so upset hasn't been carried over. Like, I could just imagine myself, even in, like, something simple, like the Pokemon games for the Game Boy Color, just like, man, I would love to skip this fucking dark cave right now. Like, I've been in here a million times, I don't need to talk to another Zubat. Like, I wish I had the just skip over this dumb...
I know I know in the grand scheme of things, I need to go over one square on the game, but I have to go through this cave. If I just use the bridge...
I believe if you watch the speed runs of the original Game Boy Pokemon games, there's a glitch that they all use that actually allows you to just do exactly that, walk through walls. And it makes the game a lot shorter. So check that out, kids, if you haven't seen that. It's pretty interesting.
I need to get good, I guess.
But that's adventure, I think, more or less.
Yeah, we got to rank it. This is a weird one because it is one of those games.
It comes down to this question, like, you know, when you rank these games, there's maybe kind of two things to consider, like its legacy. What did it, you know, how important is this game? And then how good is it still? And I think it's like adventure is undeniably one of the most important games that has ever been made. But really, when you really think about it, would you recommend this game to like your nephew or something like that? Is it still really that good?
If they ported it to iOS,
it was one of the first games ported to iOS, by the way.
Oh, it was?
Wow.
Yeah, you could play it in 2008, I think. Right when the App Store opened up, you could play Adventure.
I know. We'll get that right now.
And in fact, that's the first time I finished the game was that way. But Grace can answer this question because she played it all the way through, beating it kind of by accident, it sounds like. Was it fun?
I thought it was really fun. But I am in a weird position of I get super jazzed about video game history and the whole the wild, which of course all the listeners of this podcast would too, but the whole Wild West era of games where people were just figuring it out. And so that's something that I find really energizing and kind of persuaded me to go back through it. In terms of, does it hold up? I mean, I played it, I got through it the first time, under 20 minutes, probably more like 12.
Yeah.
So it's there is that, and I'm not a particularly amazing video game player or anything. So I feel but I feel like my experience would, I don't know. It is hard. I do wish we had a separate.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, saying, you can beat it in 20 minutes even without knowing what you're doing is, you could look at that as a knock against it, or you could look at that as a huge asset because it is a very simple game and you can finish it quickly, but that in a way makes there's kind of no excuse not to play it.
Yeah. Because
it's super important. It influenced a lot of things. Now, sure, any number of games would have done this eventually, but that's not the point. The point is somebody came up with a way to do it on literally the most primitive hardware imaginable. I mean, it's you couldn't have picked a weirder platform to develop a action adventure game for than the 2600, especially in the 70s before all the tricks had been figured out. Mm-hmm. And you can finish it pretty quickly, and it is fun, I think. I had a lot of fun playing it in, the late aughts, playing it, not for the first time, but for the first time playing it seriously as somebody who sat down and finished it. It was fun, and it doesn't take long to play, and I think most people, if they give it a chance, will enjoy it. It's rudimentary and fun in a way that a lot of the best early Atari games are. I'm talking about stuff like Combat and Warlords and Haunted House and Pitfall. So these are very simple games, but there's something elemental and fun about it that people will still get a kick out of. I've got one of those plug and play Atari consoles. I think it's the Flashback 2 or something like that. It's the NES Classic Edition, but 10 years ago. You plug that into a TV and you sit down with a couple of joysticks and give it to some kids and play some of these early games, and they'll get into it pretty fast. I think Adventure might take a little bit more effort on their part.
Well, the problem with Adventure is, unlike some of the other Elemental games, which I'll use like Space Invaders or Pac-Man as an example, because it is more complicated, there's a bit more that can age it, especially since when you break down the actual game, it really is kind of just wandering around some mazes until you collect the items, and it is basically a key hunt, is essentially, if you went to Doom and removed most of the monsters in a Doom level, and that's it, that's Adventure. You grab some keys and then you find the exit, which in this case is return the chalice to the castle. So I think of these games, it hasn't aged quite as well. It's still fun because it actually is fun, but it doesn't have quite the same degree of
it's not as fun as say Combat is, right?
If you threw this at say we'll say a 12 or 13-year-old, they'd just be like, why are you making me play this? I just want to play a video game.
Yeah, but they're idiots. I mean,
I'm just saying,
about, people who like games, not people who just using racial slurs over voice chat.
No. Okay, let's say a theoretical 12-year-old who likes games and is interested. I think that they would play this game and immediately understand the historical significance from it, but would play it for 10 minutes and go, cool, I'm glad I know that exists, but I'm going to go check out other stuff.
Yeah, of course they'd check out other stuff. You got to move on to something. But I'm just saying, for what it is, if it's fun and you can stand to play it long enough to finish it, which, keep in mind, this is one of the first games that could be finished.
Yeah.
That's graphical and not a text adventure. I mean, that is pretty
It was very confusing when I did finish it, because it was oh, it's not, Derek, it's not moving anymore.
None of that.
The wrong.
There's no card space left to say the end. It's just you just have to get hard lock.
What kind of sound does it make? It's boop, boop, boop. It's you're done. Okay, great. I would put this to rank this. I would put it. I'm going to say right below Kicks and because I think Kix is a similarly primitive game that has just that much more replay value. But it is.
Can I stir the pot?
Okay. All right.
I want this to go above Final Fantasy VII.
You do this because you're a hater.
I
hate Final Fantasy VII.
We've never had anyone complain about a Final Fantasy VII placement. We get complaints about almost all of our placements, but Final Fantasy VII apparently.
Riven Defender every other week who's like, "What do you got to do to Riven?
Yeah,
master that's Riven."
Riven?
Yeah.
You think Final Fantasy VII would have defenders out the yin?
Yeah, no,
nobody comes up.
No, they don't.
Maybe the tide has finally turned on FF7. I've been holding that banner since the jump from the start of it.
As a JRPG, I mean, you can go back and listen to whatever episode that was. What episode was that? 14.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, listen to Top Games 14, and you'll hear me talk about it at length. And basically, I just point out that as a JRPG, it's good enough, and as from a character design, art design standpoint, it's incredible. It's really good, and it's unique in a way that it's really hard for games to really pull this off again. Like I'd say, like you have to go, like games like Borderlands do this now, where they're like there's a style to it that kind of defines something or is impressive. The reason why that's why I would put Adventure below it, but I can see what you're saying. Race, what do you say?
Eric has a real horse in this race.
Yeah,
I haven't played Dragon Saga recently enough and long enough to really feel comfortable putting it on the side of.
I do think when it comes to this, we are really, really digging in our heels in terms of how influential and how important and how defining Adventure is. You'd kind of be insane to sort of be like, which game is better in like a really like physical way between like Adventure and say Panzer Dragoon Saga, because
when I really
this game Adventure barely has graphics. It's got a nice chicken duck bird dragon, but
if someone was asking me if they should play Final Fantasy VII or if they should play Adventure, I would tell them to play Adventure. Like if I really had to like, I would say that.
Well, I think that's the way you're done with it after 20 minutes. Whereas with Final Fantasy VII, you're like, after a long call, you haven't even started playing.
Save some time.
Yeah.
You are mortal. You have
like it's still like Mr. T like waving his stump arms at the camera at 20 minutes. Like nothing has happened. But there are images and stuff in Final Fantasy VII that I think will still resonate today. Like the art in the music and stuff like that. Like it's not the best Final Fantasy VII game. It's not the best JRPG. It's not. But there is a value to the style. That's all I'll say. But if everybody disagrees with me and says, as long as you don't put Adventure above Metroid, I'm okay.
No.
I'm just extremely struggling to really place Adventure.
I think really it needs to be either tough one. It needs to be on one side of Final Fantasy VII. I kind of feel like that's.
Okay, so Grace, what do you say? Above or below Final Fantasy VII?
I was just stirring the pot.
I'm okay with either or, though I would push. After I realized that I would recommend Adventure over Final Fantasy VII, I do. Oh, our dog's sniffing the mic. I do kind of want to put it above Final Fantasy VII.
Final Fantasy. I think that's it because I can live with that, and that's 3. So it doesn't matter what Cal thinks. Democracy has spoken. This week's episode is brought to you in part by Third Wave Water. Several years ago, I had the chance to live in Italy, and that's a nation that's rightfully proud of their espresso. While I was there, I learned that one of the reasons their coffee tastes so good is because of the mineral content in their water, and probably their pipes. So that means that even if I use the same coffee, the same machines, and I did it at home, my espresso would taste a lot worse than theirs because I don't have the same water. My tap water is disgusting. Your favorite coffee shop knows this, which is why they've spent thousands getting their water just right. And thanks to our friends at Third Wave Water, you can work that same magic for yourself for as little as 10 cents a cup. Their patent-pending blend of minerals brings out your coffee's natural acidity and sweetness. I've tried Third Wave Water for myself. It's super easy. I just opened a gallon of purified water, poured in a tiny little packet of minerals, switched it around a little, and used it in my perfectly normal, not particularly fancy coffee maker. And the difference was obvious. It's the same coffee I always use. But I don't know how to describe. I guess I would say the flavor is clearer. You know how the side of the coffee pod boxes have all those little flavor notes? I felt like for the first time in my life, I felt like I could actually taste that stuff. So if you want to support this show and dramatically improve the taste of your coffee, check out thirdwavewater.com and use promo code HARDCORE for 10% off your order. That's thirdwavewater.com, promo code HARDCORE.
In the year 2027, the American Congress passes a poorly worded bill that inadvertently renders all video games illegal. Within 3 days, the entirety of the United States of America collapses into a post-apocalyptic hellscape. But for those of you lucky enough to live in the past, there's
still time to donate to the Hardcore Gaming 101 Patreon. So give now, and ensure that the only thing keeping you awake late at night
is the ever-present threat of Mecha Hitler's cybernetic human extermination squads.
It's nice to have peace of mind.
Next game we're talking about is Hexen 2, which was nominated by @Cambert123 on Twitter. It was developed by Raven Software, published by id Software for the PC. Earliest release date and territory is August 31st, 1997 in the United States. Oh my god, I'm old. I am so old. 1997, this feels like yesterday. So this is a game that I believe it uses the Quake engine, does it not?
Yes, it does.
And it is the third game in the Heretic Hexen series?
That is the last one, actually. It is the fourth game.
Yeah, it killed it. So
yeah, was it one game? Really? I didn't know there was a...
What was the first game? Was it
Hexen? Hexens, right?
There's Heretic, which is and there's Heretic, and then there's I had our friend Satenga tell me the chronology of this series, but I kind of forgot it already because it's crazy. I think there's Heretic, and then there is Hexen Beyond Heretic, and then there's Heretic 2, and then there's Hexen 2, I think is the order of release.
Really? I did not know that.
There's 4 games in this series of 2 games, but also kind of 3 games, because only 3 of them are connected or something. It's, this is Hexen 2! That's the one we're playing. It's the only 3D one.
The way players at the time experienced it was there was Doom 2, there was Heretic, there was Duke Nukem 3D, and there was Quake and Quake 2. That's the way the chronology went. That's what games actually people play.
All the cool kids played Blood and Redneck Rampage.
Can't forget about Blood.
Redneck Rampage, yes.
I'm quite happy to forget about Redneck Rampage.
Look, I was there. I was at the epicenter of PC gaming, aka a little storefront establishment known as Cybercore. Like land games.
Wow. I love your Cybercore story.
Cybercore, and nobody played. No, this is Blood. Everybody was.
I know.
Cool
my little
Cybercore.
My little neck of the woods down here in Australia, we played quite a bit of Blood and Duke 3D. Those are the 2 games that were.
Really?
Blood is so good.
I figured Australia at that time, you guys would still be playing like the paddle with the ball and the rubber band.
Yeah, stick paddle, mate.
Yeah, stick paddle. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Australia. I love you.
But no, I can't speak for all of Australia because Australia is large enough that regional things, people are like, well, we all did this. Yeah. It's like, no, we didn't. What are you talking about? You're crazy. Like half of Australia had Commodore 64s hanging out, and you find them in the trash and stuff. So you never know. But this side of things, the Hexen Heretic side, I didn't really see much of or hear much of. I think I distinctly remember seeing the Hexen 2 box at local game retailers. It's quite a distinctive box with the like creepy like looking Hexen 2 font with the big X and the guy in robe standing like in the light and stuff. 90s the video game right there.
I don't know anybody who played Hexen 2. I feel like if they were selling it anywhere, it was like, buy a copy of anything and get Hexen 2 for free.
I do seem to remember that it was the kind of game that sat there and just slowly was given more and more pricing stickers as they sort of
Derek, what were you going to say?
I actually, for a short time in my life, had a PC and was like, could play like games like Hexen 2 and Quake, and for kind of a hot minute, I was a PC gamer like that. I remember just never really getting into Hexen 2, and then kind of looking back into it for our discussion here, I was like, I remember why I did not like this game. Why it did not do much for me.
So
it's like Quake, except you punch things.
Well, I was going to say it's like Quake, except you take out the things that are good about Quake and release it.
Yeah.
sorry, people that love Hexen, and especially Hexen 2, but I did not like this. I'm like...
I've never met a single person who likes Hexen 2.
I looked at the Steam reviews. Some people like this. I'm not... Like,
That's true.
reviewed...
Those are oddly positive. I guess the only...
And does pretty well on Metacritic, and, it did pretty well at the time, the kind of game that got, in the 80s, slightly above the 7 out of 10 range, so people actually were getting into it. I did like the Steam reviews, because a lot of the Steam reviews are stuff like, the levels aren't very good, the game is confusing, it's not very balanced, I didn't really enjoy it, positive. It's like, hold on. I slow down.
There's kind of a halo effect from Heretic. And because Heretic was pretty good, as I recall, I haven't played it in probably 23 years.
That's the catch here.
But I remember not caring at all about Hexen 2, or even Hexen for that matter. I did like Heretic. I'd say like the thing about the whole conceit of this series is like it's like Doom or Quake, except you're like a magician and you can do magic stuff and you got magic powers. And
unless you pick one of the other classes and then you can just hit things.
But you don't really, it doesn't do enough with that concept. And when you get another game that we played for this podcast before we were ranking games, Clive Barker's The Undying, which is a oddly inventive game that takes a lot of the same concepts and does something with it, because it's a game where you have guns and can shoot, but you can also have a separate set of controls that you can use to do magic spells and stuff. And if you're playing the game right, you're constantly trading off back and forth between shooting things with your guns and casting spells. And it's really weird and interesting and kind of brilliant. It's not a great game, but it's pretty...
This is kind of less innovative because it's taking its influences from Doom and Quake and those sort of games and trying to, spin those off a little bit. So, you get things like, you have like your standard inventory of items that you use the brackets to cycle through, and then you just hit enter to activate different, like, pretty basic things like healing and, knock enemies away and stuff. And yeah, it's a game with mouse controls, and there's no mouse look. So that kind of sends... Hey guys, you got this great fully 3D engine, it's called Quake. But you can look around in 3D, and it's really great. You can use the mouse and everything.
But don't look around or you will be killed immediately.
Yeah, so they basically ripped the mouse out of the game, and you have to use like page down and delete to look up and down.
It's so bad. And you gotta like jump. Like the way the jump function is like mapped to... I mean, I know you can remap the key.
Yeah, you can remap it. We're not like...
But is there anything interesting about this game that should be mentioned before we rank it wherever?
It's weird for me when I think about the good things that Hexen 2 does. I think like, well, isn't that kind of what all of the Hexen Heretic games do? Like these are basically like, it's a really nice Doom mod, but instead of shotguns, it's scepters, And I think that's cool. Instead of it being hell and heavy metal, it's, folklore and, Lord of the Rings. And it's like, there's an audience for that. I think that's fine. And sort of the open world aspects of like the first Hexen, there's some neat stuff kind of going on there. But even in that pantheon of the Hexen Heretic games, I'm not really the best person to answer this question, but I get the sense that Hexen 2 is, even among those games, not very good.
Just kind of bland.
Yeah, like it's part of a lineage. And there are better games than the other four that are, this may be on the lower tier of those 4 games that make up the Hexen Heretic.
So the coolest thing about this one, I think, is that instead of just being medieval, which is the most distinct thing about these, they are hack and slashes as such, as opposed to shoot 'em ups, which is,
but not in like a unique way, like Ultima Underworld. It's like in a it's like
you've got the chainsaw or fist in Doom, and that's like your main weapon for the whole game kind of deal. But no, what they do is this one does start to spin off to interesting locations. I think that like the later levels are like set in Egypt and some other sort of like civilizations and things, which is that's pretty cool if you're mostly used to I don't know, like sci-fi or something that a lot of first-person shooters were doing at the time. So that's that in itself is pretty cool. And the hub world approach is interesting. You've got a core hub world, and then you bounce off to different like levels within the hub world, and you collect items and objects in those in order to do things in the hub world to progress your game. But the actual progression is like, you have to get this obscure item in this place, and then dump it in this obscure thing in that place, and then you have to find this one wall which looks different to all the others, and it's hidden in a corner, and that wall will break, and then you'll find the thing to kin to. It's like, Huh?
Yeah. I mean, if the game were more fun and better built, that kind of thing would probably really stand out as like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. They took stuff that, the kind of things that like adventure games and Metroid type games and other things were doing at the time, like, oh, they translated to FPS games, and somebody would have done it eventually, but you got to do it in a game that's actually fun.
Yeah, they didn't quite get there yet. And there were cool things like early on, there's a catapult and a locked door, and you can, the way you get through it is you jump into the catapult and launch yourself over the wall in the catapult.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool stuff.
And you know to do that because there's a sheep in it, right?
Yeah, and the sheep gets shot over before you, and you're like, all right, cool, here we go.
Oh, I know what to do here.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand on that catapult. Here's the funny thing about these, I think all the Heretic Hexen games are like this, but there's a lot of canyons and a lot of castles built within the canyons, which is kind of like the last place you would ever build a castle. If you think about it, like you would build a castle on the top side of the canyon, like above the canyon.
Yeah, so you can
go down
stuff
into the canyon. It's like, I built this castle, and it's like your enemies are like, okay, we're going to dump these rocks on you. No.
Think this through.
I was such a fool to build my castle in the canyon. I should never have done that.
3 generations to build this castle.
So many of my serfs died building this castle in the canyon. What did I do?
My serfs, no.
No, I was such a fool.
So, basically, I guess we can move on to ranking with this one. But
might as well.
What I'm saying is a little bit like, because we talked about this very recently, the original Jedi Knight game.
Let's say that, yeah.
This one feels again like it came out in 97, so it was just kind of enough time where people weren't really sure what you were going to do with first-person shooters. We weren't really sure, so everyone, like a lot of developers were just kind of throwing stuff in a pot and seeing whether it worked out or not. And then in the next couple of years, you'd have stuff like Half-Life and the Unreal line of games, and they would be like, oh, yeah.
I think Half-Life was 97.
If it was, it would have been later than this one by just a few months, because I think the release date was a little later. But
97 was a crazy year for video games.
There's a lot of stuff happening.
98. My bad. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. It was before Half-Life. So yeah, I think really what we can say is like what this game does differently. It doesn't quite do very well, and the stuff that it does that sets it apart from other shooters of the time is still maybe done better in the other games in its ilk.
It really isn't that ambitious.
Because when you have something like, because I mentioned before, like Duke 3D and Blood and the Build Engine games and stuff, they manage to present much more interesting worlds with kind of more interesting puzzles. They don't quite have the sprawling 3D-ness that this obviously has because it's built on Quake, but they just feel a lot better to play in most ways. Whereas this one's just kind of a little bit more frustrating. I do appreciate that most of the projectiles are projectiles in this game so that you can actually dodge things to an extent so that you don't feel like... Yeah, because if there was too many hit scan things, using melee weapons would be just awful, but I wouldn't put this one too highly, so...
I would put it below... I'm going to say below Mega Man 02 or below Glover, which are right next to each other. Because I feel like I feel like Glover's actually better in a weird way.
Well, as I said,
like actually underneath that is Gomorrah Speed, which is like a kind of a unique game.
You can't get away from the Ball Centipede.
No, you can't. There's Altered Beast, which is right underneath that, which is a trash game, but is really beautiful for its time.
The arcade version of Altered Beast is pretty good.
That's the one we ranked. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I would say. I also just want to interject real quick. Y'all got Nightshade way too low. Nightshade on the NES needs to be a lot higher. But I digress. I really feel like, we don't want to put... I don't think Hexen needs to be below King Crusher. I already forgot what the hell that one was called.
Hakaioh!
Yeah, that one.
No, I think that's fair. It doesn't have to go quite that low. I think the only real big problem with Hexen 2 is that you had better first-person shooters released before it that year, and then you had incredibly better ones released the next year. So it was like, all right, cool.
Right.
There's something about a middle-tier game that is worse than the worst game.
This is the problem we have on the show, is that it's really, like, games tend to go kind of on the top third of the list or on the bottom third, and the middle is just kind of whatever ends up there.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about things in those terms. I would put it, okay, so I think what Derek's saying is it's got to go above Nightshade. I would put it above Riven because whatever. And,
I wouldn't put it above Riven. No, that's where I would.
Really?
Riven.
Riven overflows with effort, and they miss it by trying to be too grandiose for their own good. This game doesn't feel too grandiose for its own good. It just feels like
I would Hexen 2 is at least it's kind of fun, whereas like Riven is the anti-fun. It is not
fun. Is Nightshade? You are crazy. Nightshade's a fun game. It's hilarious.
Derek, don't embarrass me on the internet.
Too late. You shouldn't have.
I have no problem putting it below Nightshade. I barely know anything about Nightshade, so cool.
I know that Satenga really likes it, but Satenga ain't here right now.
Well,
okay, all right. But it's got to be in that range. Can I at least say it's got to go below Tale of the Sun? Okay,
of course, you can say it's got to go below Tale of the Sun because it's going below Riven and probably Nightshade.
Okay, all right.
How about above the New Zealand story, or the Kiwi craze, as I've known it?
Yeah.
Right
okay,
there, I guess Altered Beast.
Yeah, I mean, Altered Beast at least sticks in the culture in a way that Hexen 2 and can't possibly hope to.
Hexen 2 is
have a rise from your grave moment. It doesn't, that rise from your grave will live on for a long time.
And welcome to your doom.
Welcome to your doom. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like that in Hexen 2.
Hexen 2 is really just riding the coattails of the sort of the Heretic franchise, and it's just the Quake engine, but
which is like a B+ franchise. Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, that's where it goes. So done. Hexen 2, which may have a more to the title, but I don't care. Colon like the bloodening or whatever.
I think Hexen 2
got to be more to the title. It's just Hexen 2.
1 was called Beyond Heretic, but I think Hexen 2, lame name. Also
Hexen
lame name.
2, even we don't care anymore.
They should have put an extra X in there and just called it Hexen, with like 2 X's. That would have been so cool.
Hexen,
no.
Extreme
and then
Hexen.
that would leave room for the porn parody.
Yeah.
Right? Always got to be ready for that.
Triple XN.
Triple Xen.
Triple XN over here.
Ice Cube makes a cameo for no reason.
He was in the second one without Vin Diesel.
Sam Jackson shows up to collect a paycheck and promptly leaves.
Pull the plug on it. This one's ranked.
This one's done. It goes. I forget immediately where we put. It goes
above
below
the New Zealand story.
It goes below. Okay, it goes below Altered Beast and above the New Zealand story. Hexen 2. Let's never speak of this again.
Wait, should we put it next to X-Men so all the X's are together? X-Men and Hexen 2 just hanging out?
So before we sign off here, Derek and Grace, where can we find your stuff at? And is there any way we could ever meet you in person?
Wow, it's funny you should mention that. Turns out we are going to be at Too Many Games this June in Philadelphia. And we will be actually doing a panel on June 24th at 2:30 p.m. We will be there. You will be able to see our faces, breathe the same air as us. And we have a really awesome panel planned for you guys.
We might be giving out hugs and high fives to all the cool dudes.
Ooh, sounds really nice. I wish I could be there.
Are not invited though. No chumps, please.
No.
The no chump zone extends to Philadelphia. The no chump zone comes to Philadelphia to stop skeletons fighting.
But is there a possibility that non-chumps could go there and become chumpified? Are they going to be chumpatized?
That's always the struggle, man. Everyone act a chump occasionally, but you can reform yourself. You gotta endeavor to be better than a chump. It's okay, man.
Well, that's the thing about our panel is it officially inoculates you against chumps.
Okay, you're not going to be chumping.
You have to experience the whole thing. Is that correct? Like, you can't just drop in. You have to.
If you leave early, it's automatic chumpification.
Yeah,
don't make the rules. It's science, unfortunately.
In terms of that, I don't know if we even mentioned that. Of course, we have a YouTube channel, so check us out on our YouTube. Stop Skeletons from Fighting. We do live stuff and everything. So, you know, it's important for us to say. YouTube.com/u/lowfatjello.
Yep. That will also work.
Because we're a part of old YouTube, and that was...
Because technically I opened up my YouTube account in 2006, baby.
Oh, yeah.
It's made from hooves, you know. Hooves. That's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to @Cambert123 and @Neon_Henchman on Twitter and Earl Grey III on iTunes for nominating those games. Thanks as well to those of you we haven't gotten to yet. We will be getting to you soon. We try to get to everybody. And thanks to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots, and to our editor Jeff Rude, and our theme song composer Muteki, and our technical assistant and video editor Bobinator. And of course, thanks to the support and feedback of listeners like you. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. I know I did. And you can help us out by subscribing to the HG101 YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to Stop Skeletons from Fighting's channel, right?
Mm-hmm. We encourage it, yes.
Yeah, it's great. If on the offhand chance you aren't watching their channel, you would love it. If you like the show, you would love it. You can also help us by following at GC9X and at HG_101 on Twitter. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the podcasting firmament by getting on iTunes and or Stitcher, subscribing to this show, and giving us a 5-star review. Do it, or face consequences both horrible and itchy. Until next week, keep keeping it real.